So I love watching chess content on YouTube, and you probably do as well. And one content format I personally quite enjoy is Road to 2000 ELO players. However, something I've learned from literally all of them is that not a single one of them knows how to review a chess game. Like, it's kind of absurd to me, just how bad they are at it. Like, I understand it's not the most interesting thing content-wise, but the whole point of the series is for you to improve. So why don't you analyze your games better? So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna show all of you how to actually analyze a game of chess. Boring, grindy chess analysis, the best content on YouTube. Alright, first takeaway. Do not, and I mean do not, hit the big green game review button. Why? Every time, and I mean without fail, I see someone do the game review, they become incredibly lazy. They'll go through the game, yep, good move, best, yep, that was good. Alright, oh, here I made a mistake. What would have been the best move? And then they go, knight f6, no. Pawn d5, no. Pawn e4, no. And then they stumble on the correct move, or they won't find it at all. They'll be like, alright, what did I have to do? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's it. That's the end of the analysis. And it is beyond useless. Okay, I was obviously exaggerating a bit. Let's look at the game. This is by Chess with Patrick. He is a really admirable Road to 2000 rating YouTuber. I respect his grind. He has been stuck on a big plateau, though. So let's take a look at how he reviews this game.
Yeah, book move. I could have played the knight to f6. Would have been...
What do we learn? I could have played the knight to f6. Ah, I see. Right.
Okay, checking was the best move. Taking, good move. And then a mistake. Oh, I made the mistake super early. Because it did give them that center, but pushing this pawn up one. Okay, and if they do this, I come back.
So what do you think we learned from this? Like, what is the point of analyzing a chess game? To learn things, right? So I see that I've made a mistake. I instantly have, I don't even have that setting turned on. Analysis, suggestion arrow, there we go. So we've played this. We already have this arrow here. Then we go, oh really, I should have played d6. Oh, but what if they go here? Oh, this is better for me. By the way, the reason why this is better to black, let's say after move like e4, f5. Here we get a nice lead in development and a slightly better pawn structure. Let's say they just defend this pawn or something. Let me turn these arrows off again, they're really annoying. So here I would say that after takes, here we're hitting the bishop with tempo again. And after it's moved somewhere, like I said, we still get a lead in development and the better pawn structure. And in this scenario, the open f-file is actually also quite nice.
They take here, I take back, and then they could do this, but then I take back with the knight. They have doubled up isolated pawns here. Okay, yep.
Yep, got it. I'm sorry, this is not how you review a game. So, what should you be doing? We're gonna analyze a game over here that was shared to me by someone I know, and we're just gonna take a look at it. Like I said, don't hit the big green game review button, just use self-analysis. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn off the engine lines, and we're even gonna turn off the evil bar altogether. The engine is a great tool, but think for yourself before anything else. Imagine I played this game, right? And I see the Sicilian defense, and then I see a6 coming up. So we take and take. And if I'm rated 1300, this is the moment where I would be out of book. So let's write it as a comment. Out of book. This is the first thing I would always note down. When you're out of the theoretical line, I know. I would even recommend you do this while you're actually playing the game. That way you're not gonna make a mistake, blitzing out a move, thinking that you're still in theory. In this position, not a crazy amount going on yet. So the move castling, there obviously can't be anything bad with it. But if a move is obviously fine, you don't have to spend an hour on it, right? We've only played a rapid game. That takes 20 minutes in total. That means that we're not gonna spend an hour analyzing the game afterwards. That would just be super inefficient. The opponent goes pawn to d6. And here we played rook e1. Rook e1 seems to me to have two ideas. First of all, we're overprotecting e4. And we're maybe floating the idea of pushing the e-pawn. So if this was my reasoning behind this move, write it down. Protects e4, prepares e5. Now maybe during the game I did some calculation as well. Maybe during the game I calculated pawn e5. Well, if you calculated that, write it down. So I calculated what did my opponent do here. Well, I saw that if they took, I took back, that they get these weird pawns, and I thought this was kind of good for me. So let's put that here. Let's say white has a moderate advantage. The difference between a moderate and slight advantage, it really doesn't matter. We can clearly tell that this isn't a one game yet, so let's just call it a moderate advantage. However, this wasn't the only move I thought. during the game, let's say, that pawn d5 would come. And here I figured that this spin would be super annoying. Maybe I calculated something like knight c3, bishop g4. And then how did I evaluate the position? So let's just say I didn't think e5 led too much. You can keep it simple. So let's say I'm 1300. This position is kind of hard for me to evaluate. So let's just call this unclear. To me, during the game, this felt super unclear. So that's what led me to the move rook e1. So the opponent played the move pawn e5, which to me looks like a good move, prepares further development, controls the center further, and prevents this e5 pawn push by white. Okay, and here we played the move pawn c3. They're playing the Rossolimo. So in the Rossolimo, let's say they played g6. So castles, bishop g7. Here there's a theoretical line after rook e1. Where if they go knight d4, we drop the bishop back. And now we're gonna break open the center with c3 d4. So this is an idea I know. So c3, I can say something like common idea in the Rossolimo. Our opponent played knight f6. And here we played the move pawn d3, which isn't really a coherent move with our last move, right? Like ideally, I'd want to play d4. And this is a rapid game, so I assume they looked at this. Once again, write down your calculations. So let's say after d4, the only thing I've really checked is something like cd, cd, pawn takes, queen takes, and then they do something like bishop e7. And here I evaluated this as not that good for white. And then I might write down my reasoning, something like I have opened the position for the bishop here, and I didn't know what I was accomplishing. So let's say we've done this for the entire game. I'm not going to do that right now. Then we go for layer 2. Now we go through it. Here we actually analyze. So we saw the move e5, and we didn't quite like d5, because during the game we calculated knight c3, bishop g4. You know, the first approach might be, could we play h3, right? Just preventing this move. Well, so they should still develop this bishop. This looks like a Caro French-esque structure. This move e6 is gonna happen, so bishop f5 makes a lot of sense to me. Now we might play something like knight c3. If they push this knight, we just play knight a4. This knight stands kind of nicely here. If they play something like e6, here we can probably just continue with normal development. So let me just write this down as a, let's say, speculative move, because I didn't find it during the game, but I found it during analysis. Now we go to the other line. Here after knight f6, I calculated d4, and this becomes super concrete. So in the game, let's say, I only calculated all the forced exchanges. So first we go through this line. Something fun here to realize against the uncastled king. It would be great if this file opened, right? A good move to look at here might be the move pawn e5. That's quite interesting, actually. The knight is hit, and this pawn is hit. If you just move the knight away, let's say to d5, we can just take with check and nothing can block. And the king move in here, we can just end the line, right? This is obviously not what black wants, meaning that we have to engage with this capture. Then we promote this variation, so it's a bit higher up. So now I have two options. I can take with the rook or with the knight. To me, taking with the knight seems kind of obviously the best move. Now they really need to be careful about some discovered attack. So let's say they think, okay, I need to quickly castle and play bishop e7. Or here I know this knight c6 is really nice, and this just wins the game, meaning that they need to block the diagonal some other way. So I could obviously take on c6. Is there a reason not to? I don't really see it. Knight c6, what does my opponent do? Always end your analysis after your opponent's made a move. So let's say something like queen d6, keeping it nice and centralized. How do I evaluate this position? So I can say something like d4 is hanging, black still isn't castled. This seems winning. And because I didn't find this move during the game, but during the analysis, I'm gonna mark this as speculative. Now the next part, we're gonna analyze with the engine. But what we're going to do is we're gonna turn on the engine, but we're gonna keep the engine lines closed. Because it might be possible that we missed a tactic. So let's go through the game, and that we even missed during the analysis. Rook e1. Seems quite alright. And I can also already check my analysis real quick. What does the engine think about e5? Also quite alright. Pawn d3. And here I see a bit of a drop. And I analyzed d4. So is that the move? So let's check our analysis. cd, cd, pawn takes, and our initial queen takes, not that good. Although our initial valuation, thinking it was better for black, was completely wrong. So that's already an interesting moment. This is a position that you evaluated wrong. You can learn from that. So the best way to learn from these types of things, what I see a lot of people do who take analysis more seriously, is when they are wrong about something, they turn on the engine and then they go, Okay, so e5. Here there's c5. Queen a4, check. And here black castles. And then they try and figure it out via this process. Don't do this. What does the engine see in this position? White stands a little bit better. When an engine says that you stand a little bit better, that doesn't mean that much. Because an engine is really strong, usually in chess. If one side stands slightly worse, like black here, that means that they have problems to solve. If they are losing, that means that they can't solve their problems. You can't figure this out by just going through the top lines of the engine, because the engine is really good at solving problems. Meaning that if you just go through the top moves of the engine, you're gonna see this advantage is gonna evaporate. And we end up in this position, which feels a lot less clearly better than this one. So what can you do? The best advice, if you misevaluate a position like this, is ask other stronger players than you. So go to Discord, go to Reddit, go to Twitter, maybe just go to your local chess club and ask them like, hey, I thought like black stood good here with the bishop pair and the position about to open up, but the computer told me white stands better. Why is that? But let's say you don't have that luxury. So what do you do then? Play some practice games. So let's practice versus the computer from this position. Okay, so this is the maximum bot. Let's not do that. So let's say I'm rated like 1300. Let's play a bot that's like 1500 bot. By the way, this is a burner account for videos. So I've obviously already done some analysis. I know e5 is quite good. And let's say we go on here. I would still recommend actually turning off the evil bar here. So my opponent played this move over here. So what are we thinking here? Well, we have the king on this open file. Let's look at some forcing moves we can capture here. Now the bishop can't take back because of the pin. So they have to take back with the queen. Otherwise we're simply gonna win a piece. And what do I notice here? Well, we've opened up this diagonal. So that looks super interesting. Takes. Okay, they go f6. This is obviously bad. This bot was maybe a bit too weak. Let's change it to a slightly stronger bot here. Alright, they took. So our queen is hit. I kind of like the move queen takes, because here I see black still can't castle, because then the bishop would be hit. So what are we expecting? Some like queen takes, bishop takes. Then we have some moves that look interesting, like knight g5, hitting the bishop, right? Like if they castle, first we win the pawn with check, but we also eliminate the problem of the bishop pair. So let's play queen takes. Okay, they go for this line. I'm seeing that there's also knight d4 with the same idea. Is there a big difference between these two? I'm gonna play knight g5. Okay, they castle, so we take, and we take. They're self-pinning. Okay, so we've won a pawn. We're gonna develop our pieces. There's no bishop pair. So here we can see, like, the engine is really good at solving issues, right? Like, in this position, after e5, they play c5, counterattacking the queen. And then bishop d7. And then they say take and castle. And now we're saving ourselves. I could see humans playing it similarly with black here to capture. And then play bishop e6, giving up the pawn. I could see that. Now, let's say we're going through our analysis with the engine, and we're seeing here that we made a big mistake. But in our analysis, we didn't catch this. That is quite interesting already, because that means that it's a very worthwhile move to analyze. So first, let's just kind of check how the game continued. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop h4, and we won our advantage back, and this we converted. Okay, so here, don't get lazy. We've missed something, both in our game and afterwards while analyzing it. That means that this is something we can definitely learn from. So let's try and figure out what's going on here. In the game, what happened? Bishop takes knight, which was correct, and bishop h4, which gives the game away. I am actually seeing that this pawn is heading, and afterwards we're also threatening a fork, so that looks annoying. There's also no tactics, because we can always defend the knight. What if we just go like king g2? Maybe they bring a rook over, and we're checking, yeah, this is all good so far. And if we then like develop. Ooh, here we missed something. Ah, right, there's this move. If you see a big swing in the evil bar and you've missed that during your own analysis, pay attention, because that shows gaps in your chess understanding. And this is how you learn in chess. And then finally, we can turn on the analysis completely, and we just check for interesting ideas. And here after d4, how does the line go? Well, we've really only checked capturing for black, and here we see the engine not even suggesting that, so that's also kind of interesting. So let's pick the top line, queen c7. Now, what we're doing isn't the most useful for learning, but it is actually quite fun. And sometimes you can find very interesting ideas from this. Also, another thing that's useful to do, we've written down out of book at some point. It is pretty good to figure out, and you can do this either with the engine or with an openings database. Did we play it correctly the moment we were out of book? Did we understand the ideas of our opening? So the Rosso Limo, the bishop is challenged, so the idea is to take, that is correct. And then here castles is a good move. So yeah, we played the opening pretty well, right? We understood the ideas of our opening. Even c3, yep, is even the top line of the computer here. Beautiful. And then what was our note? d4 is hen-in, black is in castle, this seems winning. And that's how you analyze your chess games. That's all there is to it. You can streamline this process. Obviously, if you spend a 10-minute game, you don't want to spend an hour doing this. So then maybe instead of going through it twice without the engine, just write down your ideas and then check with the evil bar on, like, oh, I missed an idea here, so we don't have to come up with all these new ideas ourselves, right? Like e5. I would generally recommend you can learn more from trying to puzzle through a position yourself, but it's not always practical. Like, you don't have to do all these things step by step. The main takeaway is start by writing down your ideas and calculations. At least think for yourself first, and only then we check with the engine. I actually forgot to say a couple things during the recording, so I'm just gonna slap this on at the end. First of all, something that really helped me with my game, if you want to go above and beyond. When you're finished, at the end, write down 3 takeaways from the game. I recommend 1 is positive, and 2 of them are instructional. The positive thing is something like, I found a brilliant combination, or I sacrificed my rook for a strong attack, or I calculated really well. The negative things can be stuff like, I didn't spend my time well. You can be more specific, like, I was down 3 minutes out of the opening, or I completely missed that my knight was hen-in. And so you write down 3 things like that at the end of the game, and what this will do for you, at some point you're gonna notice a pattern. Like, for example, with my games, at some point I noticed what I would write down a lot is poor time management. And then what you've discovered is a weakness, and that is really nice. Other things. Do you need to analyze every game you play? No, of course not. If you get hit with the Scholar's Mate, you don't need to analyze this game. Just remember the Scholar's Mate. If you played a 30-move game, your opponent blundered all their pieces, you don't have to analyze that. Pick and choose your battles. Of course, you don't have to analyze like bullet and blitz games. I hope that helped. If you like my videos, you can check out more of them. Maybe you like this one, and see you later. Bye bye.